Hey everybody, welcome to the break room. And I know it looks like the same as the normal setup. Look, I haven't got anything on this wall yet. I will set up the alternate angle so to, shake things up for a little bit. But next couple of break room videos are going to have this same setup. I'm still getting some things moved around. So, new trailer for Tenet is out. Now this, I think I'll talk a little bit after the trailer plays, but what's going on with this movie, potentially a lot riding on it. But let's just check this out, shall we? Gotta have the...
is a word. Tenet. It'll open the right doors. Some of the wrong ones, too.
Hard-hitting action. Very vague.
Use it carefully.
Yep. It's a Nolan trailer.
To do what I do, I need some idea of the threat we face.
I don't understand it.
I really need to see more of this. I need to see Black Klansman.
I'm not saying Armageddon here.
No. Something worse.
Huh. I like how old the
Gather you have an interest
bits of equipment looked.
in a certain Russian national.
Why bring me in? You really want to know? He can communicate with the future.
Communicate with them.
No.
Huh.
Version.
Aim it and pull the trigger. You're not shooting the bullet. You're catching it.
Whoa.
Okay.
Well, I've seen too much. Well, we'll try and keep up.
Your duty transcends national interests. This is about survival.
Seems bold.
Bold, I'm fine with. I thought you were going to say nuts.
Ooh.
This is where our roots go.
Seeing things move backwards in some of these shots is really captivating.
Old.
You chose the wrong profession.
Those are some good lines.
What the hell happened here? Hasn't happened yet.
There are people in the future who need us. They need Tenet.
We need to save him here and now.
Sorry I'm so quiet. I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
It's reversing the flow of time. Doesn't us being here now mean it never happened? You want to crash a plane, but not from the air. No, Mr. Dramatic. Well, how big a plane? That part is a little dramatic.
That's the sort of line and setup that feels custom built for trailers, and I have to wonder how that's gonna play in the actual film. Okay, so yeah, that's a Christopher Nolan trailer, all right. Big, huge set pieces, hard-hitting action, makes you kind of go, wait, what is going on? It's very reminiscent of Inception, which I have and continue to argue that up to this point is Christopher Nolan's masterpiece. Not necessarily his best film and not my personal favorite of his films, but the film that it felt like everything he'd been making up to that point was building towards and kind of the pinnacle of what he is about still. We'll see if Tenet displaces that. But it feels cut from the same cloth. So, like I said, I was actually fairly quiet while that was going on because I was trying to wrap my head around it. I'm really hoping, and I'm fairly confident with it being Nolan, that they're going to stick to their guns when it comes to whatever unique prescriptions and rules they put in place with however the time stuff is working. And what I mean by that is one of the things that can really frustrate the heck out of me is when a film or a story takes a unique perspective on something, but then ultimately by the end basically betrays its own starting premise to do something more traditional. The two examples I can think of off the top of my head, one is a Denzel Washington movie called Deja Vu, which started with a really fascinating premise of that we found this sort of window into time, but it's like a live stream. You can decide where you want the window and what to look at, but you can't rewind and look again, and you can't pass through and travel to the past. You can only see what happened, and they're using it to try and figure out what happened with this, basically this bombing. And that was fascinating, but spoiler, end of the movie, oh, look, he actually does manage to travel to the past. I'm like, what made your entire premise interesting in the first place was the fact that they couldn't do that, which is what they do in every other time-related kind of thing. Another example is Source Code. I like the whole sort of setup that Jake Gyllenhaal can only go through this very limited window of time. He can't change the outcome of what is going on. He can only find out, try and find out what happened and everything else. But then at the very end, he gets to stay there and change the outcome. But that one doesn't bug me as much as Deja Vu, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Nolan's the kind of filmmaker who I trust a little bit more to stick to his guns, that whatever rules he's operating under, that he will actually stick with, and it won't become a matter of, by the end, it's just be turned into traditional time travel. That would be incredibly disappointing if that happens. So, what is actually going on? Well, there's a couple of things that strike me as really interesting. There's this whole notion of time going in reverse, but not necessarily in a way that, in a way that there's some kind of control involved. There's this notion that gets said, like, you just caught the bullet as it comes out of this thing that was shot and goes back into the gun. I'm like, okay, visually I can wrap my head around that, but the way you put that and the way some of these action scenes look like they're going down, I'm really curious as to how cause and effect work in that scenario. And I don't think I can totally parse that yet. I don't think I should be able to parse that yet. Anyways, there's also this notion of communicating with the future, and somebody else says something about talking with people in the future, or the people in the future need us. So this idea of the future almost operating like it's another country, that the present is entering into some sort of negotiations or joint task in. That might just be my extrapolation, but just as a vibe, as a way to approach it, that's kind of interesting. I'm digging that. I like that Robert Pattinson has a bit of the smirking grin thing, a little bit like what, oh my god, why can I not think of his name all of a sudden? Played Bane. He was mad at Tom Hardy. Ugh. Tom Hardy in, why couldn't I think of that? Tom Hardy in Inception brought that same sort of lighter, I'm going to have a little fun with this sort of thing, which Robert Pattinson seems to be bringing, which is actually nice because he does serious and broody way too much, and you see him in interviews, he can actually be quite charming. He just doesn't get cast to actually bring that to parts all that much. And I feel like he's being allowed to do that here, which that'll be nice. That was really kind of the only performance I got much of a feel for, as pretty much everyone else was either delivering exposition or reacting to exposition. But everyone's giving a good sense of presence, which is in many ways the best that you can hope for in a Christopher Nolan movie. I don't want to go so far as to say that he's not an actor's director the way that I might say that about, say, George Lucas, who just doesn't seem to really know how to relate to actors at all. But it's not to that level, but Nolan definitely seems to have way more interest in the plot mechanics and what he can do with his camera than, really massaging a character. I think the difference is Nolan seems to trust his actors to find the part more than Lucas did. And I think he gives them slightly better starting points with the scripts. So I mentioned before, there's a lot riding on the release of this. So as of the recording right now, the plan is to still release this theatrically. Actually, from what I can tell, at Nolan's insistence, he has a lot of clout. And he gets a lot of say and power over how his films are shot and distributed. Way more than most directors. I mean, I suppose that's what you get when you when you provide Warner Brothers with one of its most successful film trilogies in the last few decades. That gets you a lot of clout. I think he has also yet to lose them money. So he gets a long leash. He is very much insisting that this is still going to release in theaters. It's going to hold to its July release date. So it's very much counting on the idea that theaters nationwide are going to be reopened by then. And so there's a two-part gamble if they keep that release date. One, how many theaters are actually going to be open? For my money, some will be open. I don't doubt that. But I don't imagine it's going to be the full national, full scale. That would be the ideal. And then the other thing is, even if the things are open, are they, A, going to be allowed to fill them to capacity? Because you look at things like restaurants right now, some of them are starting to reopen, but they're putting more distance between tables. There's a lot of additional things and a lot of forced social distancing. So, I wouldn't be surprised if in a movie theater they have fixed seating and they can only sell every 3 seats, so there's a 2-seat buffer between people, and you have to stagger them, the rows in front and behind, and things like that, which means you can't sell out a theater. Now, some may do that, some may not. Again, it may vary state by state. It's hard to tell. But again, at a base level, I just don't expect they're going to be able to fill capacity. So, in a lot of ways, this is going to be the test bubble for how ready are theaters to reopen and keep going. And right now, especially with everything going on with things like with the I almost said a term that might get me demonetized, a big bluffing flexing match going on between Universal and theater chains about whether or not they'll ever release something into theaters again or just go video on demand. There's a lot of eyes on how Tenet is going to perform, which is frustrating. It always annoys me when the success of a film is bigger than whether or not it was any good. That always seems kind of unfair, but that's also the reality of business. But yeah, Tenet. I'm still excited for this movie. However I get to see it, whenever I get to see it, I'm excited to, whenever that is. What do you think of the trailer? What do you think of my ramble? What do you think of any of this? Thoughts? Comments? Drop them on down there. And let's talk about it. You know the stuff. Like, subscribe. I have a Patreon. Woo! I've also got other channels. Check those out as well. But don't sweat it. No pressure. We're relaxed around here. So just come on back next time you need a break.